Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to provide an update to the bull market support band. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Well, anytime Bitcoin closes above either the 20-week SMA or the 21-week EMA, you could argue that it is worthy of a video, especially when you spend a little bit of time below those levels. Remember what we talked about is that you really like to see Bitcoin stay above the 2024 high, which it has so far been able to do, which is a good thing to see. Now here, we've been in this situation before this cycle where we get Bitcoin just above that 20-week moving average. It happened right here back in 2023. Got a little bit of a pullback, but ultimately held that 21-week EMA more or less on the weekly time frame. It also happened right here in July 2024. And in August 2024, and also in September 2024. And what you'll notice is that it wasn't until Bitcoin held support on that bull market support band that it was able to usher in new all-time highs. The other two attempts were failed, right? You can see that Bitcoin got above the bull market support band, but it did not hold it. And what I've always said is you need to see really two candles. So you get your first candle above it, and you really want to see two candles after that close above it, right? And you can see that in 2024, right? In July, we got one, and then the second one was below it. And then in August, right, it got above it, but then the next week was right back down. But then here, you got above it, and then the next one was above it, and then the next one was above it, and then you went up. And we've said that many, many times, right? You don't just want to get one. You need to see it get up there, and then you need to see the follow through. And with the labor market release coming out this week, it's going to be a week full of labor market data. I wouldn't be that surprised to see, that 20-week SMA and or that 21-week EMA to be called into question before too long. So, ultimately, and I know there's people on both sides, right? Both sides. But this is the way I would say it. This is the way I would say it is that absolutely no one knows what's going to happen. And everyone, think about how many people were so confident right here that the low was in, right? And we're calling for new highs. And then we get up here and then it turns out the low wasn't in, and then they get a little bit quiet. So again, it's easy to sort of be confident and bold and make fun of people that are unwilling to sort of talk like that. But at the end of the day, what I would say is this. If Bitcoin can close the next 2 weeks above the 20-week SMA, then it's pretty I would say it leans more optimistic, like it did right here and right here, right? And here. But if we get a weekly close below the 21-week EMA, then my guess is that we get a new low, right? My guess is that we get a new low. So it's an if-then statement, right? If Bitcoin for the next 2 weeks stays above the 21-week EMA, then it's more favorable going into the summer. Now, a lot of times the summer isn't really that favorable for Bitcoin, but post-halving years can be somewhat different, right? I mean, if you actually go look at monthly returns for Bitcoin, look at 2017, right? I mean, the summer wasn't all that bad. I mean, May, Bitcoin went up 73%, and then in July and August, it also went up quite a bit. So it's not like every summer has to suck. It's just that most summers do. And it's possible this one could not be that great. We'll have to see. I mean, you can see that June of 2013, Bitcoin dropped 24%. And then, of course, and we know everyone, I'm sure here, a lot of people here remember what happened in 2021, where Bitcoin, basically the floor fell out of it in May of 2021. So, I'm not completely out of tune with that idea that, we could see that sort of that weakness return in the summer. But what I would argue is that what happens over the next couple of weeks kind of sets up the rest of the summer. Okay, so this is what I would say. I would say if Bitcoin drops back below the 21-week EMA over the next 2 weeks, then it would more likely favor what happened in 2019, where you get sort of this move above it, but then it's unable to hold it, and then it just goes right back down into a lower low, right? Now, the good news is that if it does go into a lower low, because Bitcoin has not even yet tested the 2024 high, there's a chance that could actually hold as support. Furthermore, if it copies 2017, it could still go below the 2024 high, right? The 2017 wick right there went actually below the 2016 high, and it still ushered in a right translated cycle. So I would argue you could even wick below the 2024 high and things still be okay. What you don't want to see on any lower low is a test of that trend line, right? A test of that trend line, in my opinion, would sort of, I think the writing would be on the wall at that point. Remember, even in a left translated cycle, you're always going to get a macro lower high, right? We said that. You likely would see one in the Q2 to Q3 timeframe. So that's what I'm arguing here, right? Is that if Bitcoin is unable to hold this over the next 2 weeks, kind of like what it did right here and right here, then it's more likely to usher in a lower low where we actually go back down and test the 2024 high, or maybe even slightly wick below it. In order to see something like that happen, you would likely need to see the S&P drop back down and retest this low, which is not a guarantee that that has to happen. The only case that we follow that would suggest that could be a possibility is if you look at the S&P 500 divided by the money supply M2, and you notice that, hey, this is exactly where I got rejected at in 1998. It came down, set this low right there, bounced for 3 weeks, and then came down and set a slightly lower low. So if it were to do that, then certainly it could take Bitcoin back down to potentially retest that 2024 high. If Bitcoin is able to stay above the 20-week SMA and or 21-week EMA over the next 2 weeks, then it would lean towards this not being the most likely outcome of a lower low. So I think a lot of what happens over the summer is going to come down to what happens here on this move. Because a lot of times when you get a weekly close above the 20-week SMA, you'll know pretty quickly if it's a real breakout or a fake out, right? If it's a real breakout, you would expect Bitcoin to hold support on the 20-week moving average, right? Or the 21-week EMA, right? You would expect it to hold support. If it's a fake out, then it's going to pretty quickly go back down, right? It won't hold these levels for very long if it's a fake out. I would not expect it to just stay up here for months and months and months and months without putting in new all-time highs to then go put in a lower low, right? It's going to do one or the other, in my opinion, and that's why I say the next couple of weeks should be instrumental. And I would be playing it like this. If I see a weekly close below the 21-week EMA, I would assume the next likely move is a slightly lower low, right? It doesn't have to be that much lower, but, it could just be sort of a slightly lower low, potentially down to, just below that 2024 high, okay? If this is unable to hold in the short term. So if we're unable to hold it, I would expect something like that where it goes down to, closer to that 2024 high, tests that, and then probably gets another rally back up, honestly. As I've said before, right? I mean, even the good news for the people that are worried about left translated cycles is that usually, even in left translated cycles, it's not obvious until Q4 because a lot of people aren't going to believe it until that time, because you're going to have a lot of people that are just going to assume it's a right translated cycle, and why shouldn't they? All prior cycles by Bitcoin have been right translated, so it seems that it's not like the worst thing to believe in, considering that all prior cycles have been right translated, and this is probably one of the reasons why it just keeps it going so long. So again, you need to have a strategy to play this stuff. For me, as I've said before, right? I mean, being Bitcoin heavy tends to be a lot better than being altcoin heavy, because altcoins are going to get destroyed no matter what, in my opinion. Even look at this. I mean, look at this. Bitcoin's above the 21-week EMA, or the 21-week EMA and the 20-week SMA. Guess where the altcoin market is, right? I mean, look where Total 2 is. Total 2, everything besides Bitcoin, basically. Look where it is. Not even at the 21-week EMA, right? I mean, that's how pathetic the altcoin market is. Can't even get to the 21-week EMA, despite the fact that Bitcoin is all the way above the 20-week SMA. Again, it goes to show you why Bitcoin has been the better play for those who cared to listen. And also look at Bitcoin dominance. I mean, just one weekly green candle after another. It's like 8 in a row now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, look at that. 8 in a row. We're currently on the 9th one, potentially, of another green week for Bitcoin dominance. And I mean, it shows you why, right? I mean, you look at Bitcoin USD, you're like, oh, it's above the 20-week SMA. And then you look at Total 2, and you're like, well, hell, it can't even be bothered to get up to the 21-week EMA, despite the fact that Bitcoin is all the way where it is. And considering this, I gotta be honest. I mean, I don't like that. I mean, this, you know what we've talked about with Bitcoin? Like how the sort of the lower low thing? Like we've said, as long as it doesn't go to this level, it's okay. Or as long as Bitcoin's not trading in the low 60s, it's okay. But then you go over and you look at the altcoin market, and you're like, well, hell, it's doing exactly that, right? I mean, it just went down to this level, which is why, and look what's happening, right? Total 2 is getting a nice bounce off of that level, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like, if Bitcoin ever does hit that level, you would likely get a massive bounce off of it. Probably bigger than whatever Total 2 is going to give you here, if this truly is just kind of like, a macro lower high. So again, it shows you the difference between Bitcoin and the altcoin market, right? Bitcoin has still not even tested this, whereas the altcoin market has. So in the future, if Bitcoin were to ever test that level, that means the altcoin market's down here, right? Even if Bitcoin is much higher, right? I mean, like, Bitcoin could be way up here, bouncing back up, potentially close to all-time highs again. And you could have the altcoin market stuck in traffic on Struggle Street way over here, because it just keeps on bleeding to Bitcoin because the Federal Reserve says no. We're not going to change monetary policy just yet. So keep an eye on this stuff, guys. I know it's boring sometimes, but it really does go to show you why Bitcoin dominance is important and why altcoins keep on bleeding back to Bitcoin. And, I know it's the same old thing, repetition, repetition, repetition. But guess what? Markets are boring. Investing should be boring. It's not the worst thing to just pick a few good assets, DC of those, and forget about everything else. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and again, check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.